My name is David Byttow, and this is Always Be Coding. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I made $3 million after about 6 months of work by building my first startup. Today's video is a little delicate, maybe something I don't really talk about or haven't really talked about, at least publicly. And I don't mean it to be braggy or anything like that. It's just a really interesting story, and it's something that I reflect on in my life quite often as a lesson of getting started and having a bias toward action when you have an idea and you want to build something, because you never know what's going to happen. I remember when I left Square, I wanted to travel for a little bit. I did want to start a company, but I didn't really have that much money on hand at that point, and certainly not enough to pay rent for any extended period of time. And so I actually took a lot, if not all, of the money I had saved up in my 401k at that point, just as a safety net. And that, was kind of maybe a stupid idea, but I was just really excited to build something. And so while I was traveling, I actually came up with an idea for this little app, and I wanted to learn Go at the same time. I wanted to learn Go, and I wanted to build a little iOS app. And so I had this idea for a product where I could send someone an anonymous message. I could send them a text or an email with this little web app, and it would send them a message, and it would say, hey, someone sent you this, and they'd click a link, and it would say the message and then kind of disappear. And so I just wanted to play around. And so I showed it to a friend. He really liked it. And this was a friend that I worked with at Google. He's a designer and product type person, or product manager. So we set off and we started building this thing. This was, I think, late 2013. I built a little app, and we worked hard together in this room. And we showed it to some investors, thinking, let's get $500,000 in funding and kind of go from there so we can pay ourselves a little salary. And they turned us down, and that was hard. I remember at the time I came out here to New York, and I did a couple interviews, and I had 2 job offers from 2 companies, good hedge funds, Two Sigma and D.E. Shaw at the time, and it was a good salary, and I was making nothing really at the time. And so I was very tempted, but I was convinced by Chris to stick it out and try to rethink the app a little bit. And so we did that. And by mid-December, we were testing with friends, and we got our first round of funding from Initialized Capital, which is Gary Tan and Alexis Ohanian, and we're very grateful for that. And that brought a few more investors. So we raised about $1.4 million in that round, which was good. And then a month later, we launched, early February. And actually, January 31st, I think, is when we actually launched, on a Thursday. I think a Facebook paper came out that day, too. Anyway, and it took off. And the press took a hold of it. There's a lot of articles about it, and like TechCrunch and Engadget and things like this, because there's a lot of people using it as a source of information. A lot of people came on and would post these anonymous messages and these secrets and in this feed, this almost Instagram, Facebook-like feed. And so we got more interested parties in investing, and a bunch of people were offering us money to invest, valuing us at $40 million or $60 million, up to $100 million, and wanting to invest $20 million into us. And there was just a few of us. I mean, we didn't, at that point, I think there was maybe 3 of us. And so we ultimately ended up raising $8.6 million in, I think, February, right a few weeks after launching. Maybe it was early March. And then so we grew the team, and this was a crazy story overall. So I'm going to leave out some of the details, but ultimately we ended up raising another bunch of money because we were having to scale very quickly, and we raised about $26 million. But the thing here was, we wanted to give up no more than 20% of the company in the money that we raised. We didn't want to dilute ourselves and the employees, because when you issue new shares, you're giving up a portion of the company to the investors, because they're going to buy new shares, but there's a larger pool, and so everyone has a less percentage of the company. And so one strategy that's often employed is, well, when you have a bunch of investors who want to invest, and you have to let some invest due to what's called pro rata, but you have other interests and people you want to bring in, strategic investors. It's hard, right? How do you let everyone invest and also not give up too much for your company? And so there's what's called a secondary round, where founders or early employees can sell their own shares, dilute themselves. So let's say in my case, I give up, let's say I own 25% of the company, and I sell, some amount of shares that will reduce my ownership to 23%. And roughly that's what happened here. And so my co-founder and I sold some percentage of our shares, and that equated out enough to be about 6 million. So 20 million was from the company and 6 million worth of shares to my co-founder and I. So splitting that was about $3 million each. And so 6 months into this product and app, I went from almost no money to having about 3 million in my account, and of course had to write a check for well over $1 million, or a little bit over $1 million to the government for taxes. But overall, that was a fairly life-changing event, and that was simply because, we'd gotten started, we built an interesting product, and we scaled it up quickly. Ultimately, the product failed, unfortunately, and I gave back the money that the company raised, and that went back to investors, at least what we had left. But I think the moral of the story here is, first, this is a crazy outlier event. This doesn't happen often. You do hear about certain founders making, like the WeWork CEO or whatever, I think sold some of his shares for about 700 million. Of course, their company is worth much more. But nevertheless, this is fairly common in the world of venture capital and startups and whatnot. And so, sometimes it takes a long time to make money off of your startup, and sometimes crazy things can happen. But the point is to get started. When you have something interesting, like, you can just get started and create something out of nothing and see where it takes you. We had no plan. I had no idea that something like this would happen, but I'm very grateful, and I did some stupid things, and there's more to this story. There's a lot more to this story, and I'll perhaps do more videos on the topic, but including the decision that I made to buy a red Ferrari after getting that money, which in hindsight maybe was stupid, but it was a thing, and it taught me that that's not really what's important, and that doesn't necessarily bring you happiness, but that's another topic. So yeah, if you have an idea, even if you're working, find time to do it on the side. You never know what's going to happen, and that's what I love about programming. It's this world of abundance, and you can bring something into existence that wasn't there before, that captures the imagination of millions of people and or provides utility to a lot of people, and that's valuable. So until then, always be coding. If you like this video, please leave a message, subscribe, comment, reach out to me at David Byttow. Love to hear from you. As I mentioned, there's a bunch of videos and things that I'd like to talk about, but I would love to hear from you about certain topics that I should focus in on.